Hi everyone, my name is Kareem Yaport. This proposal is really looking at utilizing research and looking at the needs of assessing prospective students applying to higher education, really looking at increasing equity and access in admissions, and really helping us understand where each individual applicant needs in terms of really in their matriculation and eventually their graduation outcomes. Really particularly looking at historically underrepresented groups such as first generation college students, low income, and those that are coming from rural areas. When you think of admissions, you think of students applying, getting accepted into college, and that's just it. Admissions is so much more than that. Why does this matter? When you really think of the number of students that are applying to college every single day, they face barriers before they even apply, from understanding what is admissions, what is financial aid, being ready for college in general, and then once they've matriculated into a school, that sense of belonging. So if we can do research ahead of time in making sure that we're looking at particular populations and making sure that, like, what are some populations that are applying or maybe are being missed within admissions recruitment, and making sure that everyone has a seat at the table and is able and willing to apply if that is the right choice of institution for them, that they're being admitted, and then once they're at in particular institutions, that their needs are being met. Making sure that inclusions are being met and that their overall success is important. And that starts in the admissions process, but involves so many other departments on campus once the students are on campus. As higher education professionals, admissions as well as advising interacts with in the admissions aspect, tens of thousands of prospective students, and in advising hundreds of thousands of students in particular areas. And so that starts in their initial interest all the way to their final enrollment and eventually to graduation. So amongst those students, there are some students that are really high achieving, but that may not have the proper support to navigate the college experience. They might have limited access to advising, and they might have financial instabilities, which puts them in a historically disadvantaged position as they kind of start their process in higher education. As we kind of look at research and how that can help us, you want to be informed in those strategies. And to do that, you need to gather data to really help admissions counselors and as well as their Marcom teams to really look at particular populations to better assist those students, maybe by providing them particular information that might not necessarily have been available to them before, particularly with financial aid, frequently asked questions, and just overall different touch bases throughout the process that might make their admissions process a little bit better, but also indicating to prospective colleagues once they're matriculated the proper tools and resources that should be created to properly help these students. So in this conversation, I'm really looking at first generation students, low income, rural, as well as international students that might have a challenge in that college readiness and preparedness, and really looking at like researching that goal. The goal is making sure that students that are academically strong and willing to enroll have the proper information to make sure that making informed decisions, as well as making sure that the institution that is admitting these students is playing a central role in optimizing that student's experience so that once they have matriculated, they don't kind of fall through their cracks. It really strengthens internal decision making in the admissions process because you feel confident in admitting a student that might be coming from a historically disadvantaged background, being able to slowly transition. And that might be with some interventions such as tapping different offices on campus, meeting with parents, or maybe even having the student sit in on a summer bridge program on campus. When I look at how does this happen and where are the access needs, I would say they're in 4 key areas. They would start in academic readiness. How confident do these students feel in their academic preparedness to this particular institution? Financial literacy. Do they understand What are their financial aid packages going to look like, scholarships and potential costs of actually attending these schools, and really understanding the difference between scholarships and grants versus loans and what they're actually qualified for. Some students don't know that they are qualified for programs such as HEOP or EOP in New York State or their particular states. And then access to admissions information. A lot of students, especially first generation students whose parents have never gone to college, don't really understand admissions information as to like the timing of things and what is required and all of the different pieces that are a part of the admissions process. Another piece is the sense of belonging. Once they've matriculated to an individual school, do they feel like they belong? Do they feel like the institution has carved out a space for them and meets their individual needs that they are probably in deficit of because they don't have the same demographic as someone coming from a more privileged background? How do you get this information? I propose a mixed methods research. I would recommend integrating both quantitative as well as qualitative data. So really looking at surveys and statistics, but also interviews and focus groups. Allowing the opportunity to kind of not only see the numbers or just the words, really understanding the trends, but also some reasonings behind certain pieces that you might not necessarily know by just looking at some numbers or just hearing stories from prospective students or former students. Having both facets of the different types of research methods and data approach really allows you to kind of get it from two sides. In admissions, most institutions use Slate as a CRM. So really utilizing the information that is produced from Slate from applicants as to different touch bases, different communications, how prepared students might have felt like asking them through surveys, but also the qualitative. How are the admitted students and some of the denied students, particularly from these historically underrepresented groups, feeling? And that's a really good way to have a good focus group. As well as you look and have conversations with these students, are there any patterns or understandings of why and what is happening with these particular groups is really informative. So having multiple data sources is really important, particularly with this group. And that's why I particularly recommend a mixed methods design for understanding the data. Let's say hypothetically we've already collected this type of data. So we could see trends, descriptive information, and statistics that we can kind of analyze between different student focus groups, maybe looking at students that are coming that are non-first generation students versus first generation students, students that are rural students versus non-rural students, and really looking at different patterns and trends, and maybe seeing if different interventions are a little bit more successful than others. Maybe it's a cultural disconnect, maybe there's a mentorship gap, or just a financial confusion. How are different interventions from the data collected allowing us to get to certain outcomes that we're looking for? So not just looking at the data and not just the focus group, but really coming with an integrated strategy as to how to best address some of these issues and some best practices. In our hypothetical research, we've already collected the data. It's all complete and beautiful. What do you do with this data? So I propose that it's not just insulated within admissions or within admissions leadership. This information should be available to the entire institution. When you think of students that are coming in, they don't just come in and disappear and just go to class. And these are students that are now a part of this institution's community. So sharing the type of data and what type of the student profile looks like, it's very important to maybe faculty that are creating particular curriculum, different offices like diversity and inclusion that might have summer bridge programs or different outreaches that are included within the institution that can be very beneficial to these particular groups, or that are a part of an institutional strategy to address some of these pitfalls that have been identified by the data. So it's very key that not just recruitment, but also advising and other key parts of the institution are involved at looking at this data and how to best help these students. So let's fast forward to the future. This data has been spread out across the institution. People have read it, and they really have tailored more resources to address some of these first-gen underserved and highly impact students. And there is new adjustments to admissions communications, as well as how these students transition into the institution. So immediate impacts. Students have information in the forefront as early as their admissions process to best address some of the anxieties that they might have. This can increase yield as well as engagement. They feel supported before they even step foot on the institution. Some medium in-term outcomes are the students are now feel a little bit more welcomed and belong in these institutions, as well as this can now lead to stronger pipelines and sense of belonging on campus, and can maybe have better academic outcomes for students in these particular populations, as well as faculty and staff feel like they understand better their students. Not just the majority, but some of these underrepresented groups that might have before seemed mysterious, or they're not necessarily so strongly understood. So we've implemented the changes, and what are the results of this hypothetical research and assessment? As we kind of improve the outreach, there's been tailored resources to these first generation students. There's been summer bridge programs and high impacts adjusted. What does this look like? So students have no longer these pre-enrollment barriers. They are better equipped to navigate and transition as they're applying into their acceptance and overall enrollment. And then there's something that has been implemented to assist in some of the areas that have been identified as some pitfalls, or to help them feel more of a sense of belonging as they transition to higher education. And then long-term tracking. So maybe this research continues on, and then you can see some patterns as to what is working, what is not working, and if there's any adjustments that needs to be made in smaller increments. So this hypothetical project is, even though it's hypothetical and we've quote unquote finished its completion, there's still so much that can be done further past this project. You can look at, are there other needs of other populations? What could be added to orientation? Is there a particular type of resilience or performance from first generation college students or rural students once they've enrolled? Is there a difference between the students from a more urban area and a rural students versus students that are coming from underrepresented groups or from predominantly white institutions? Or maybe you're looking at transfer students. There's so many that can be done through a longitudinal tracking, comparative insights that can be done to kind of just see what else can be done and some next steps. But all of it is in the love and support of having students on campus enrolling and feeling supported as early as their application process. Below are some references that I used to compile this presentation today. Thank you for listening to my proposal and project that really aims at looking at the admissions process and providing more an equitable experience to all students, and trying to bridge the gap within admissions, but also the intention and experience of our students, really identifying what's important to these students and really meeting them where they're at before they arrive on campus, and making sure that they are quickly caught, and really allowing us as an institution and throughout higher education really help serve these students and help them move forward to their success as well as their graduation, and hopefully being very strong alumni to different institutions. I hope that you enjoyed listening to my presentation. I really enjoy hearing some feedback or suggestions to refine this proposal. But thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your day.